I'm Bruce C.E. Fleming, the director of the Eden Schoolhouse Network. Our website is edenschoolhouse.com. That's edenschoolhouse.com. And our guest this episode is the fabled John Newton, the pioneer administrator of Southwest Christian High School in the Twin Cities area. Hi, John. Welcome aboard.
Bruce, I'm happy to join you.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of good memories. If you want to know what John and I were up to a long time ago, and what my wife Joy and your wife Mary and some others who together we founded that wonderful Discipleship Christian High School. You can go to their website. It's swchs.org. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about Time4Littles. And John, I want to ask you our first question. Before you became the senior educator on this podcast, I understand you've been different places. You were at Cambridge Christian School, is that right?
Well, that was my first venture into Christian education. Yes.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I had a little public school and so on. And I think the very first time that I ever taught little kids was actually Sunday school at my church.
Oh, yeah.
My dad was the pastor, and I was asked if I'd be willing to teach really little children, like 5, 6 year olds,
Oh, that's
and I really loved it. It was a new challenge for me. When you're a teenager, your patience is tested in different ways, but that really was my first venture into education. It took me a long time to get there, to be a professional educator, but that was my first job, my first venture into it.
wow. And then you went from Cambridge Christian School to Chapel Hill Academy in Eden Prairie, and then to Southwest Christian High School as the first administrator there, and then to Mountain Lake Christian School.
Lake Christian, yes.
And then you went international. Where did you go? What countries were you in?
Well, my first post was in Kazakhstan, Almaty International School in Central Asia.
Uh-huh.
Very, very, very fascinating coming into a culture that was Kazakhstan was a republic of the Soviet Union, of course, and when the Soviet Union fell, it really became its own oil-driven culture, and I was there for 4 years.
And what grades
Uh,
was that? What grades did that school have?
Grades preschool through 12th grade.
Okay, all the way from preschool. And then you ended up in Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Well, yeah, I was teacher recruiter in between. I had to come home and take care of my wife who had cancer, and so I was a teacher recruiter for a while, and then in 2019 I went to Ljubljana International School.
Wow.
I was with QSI, the organization, the first year, and then they closed the school due to COVID, and it just seemed right for us. Some local staff and I decided we wanted to continue a brand new school, and so we started a new school in the middle of COVID, called Ljubljana International School.
And what grades was that?
That was preschool through 12th grade.
When I was growing up, I used to see these Tarzan movies, with Tarzan swinging from vine to vine, vine to vine. Somehow you remind me of Tarzan with all the different things that you've been doing. But education has been a major stream there. Okay, let me ask you, one of our first questions is your faith story. John, did you come to know Christ when you were little, or was it later on?
Well, I define little. I've always been a big person, so I think that growing up as a Methodist minister's son, I knew that eventually I would have to become accountable to respond to an altar call, and believe it or not, on a dare with my friend, I said I was going to go forward at 9 years old, and I was at for those who have experience in Minnesota with the Methodist Church, Red Rock Camp was a big family camp that met every summer, and And so I responded. Interestingly enough, I was doing it as a lark, which is very much my personality to do that. My father was standing down at the altar watching me and with tears flowing from his eyes. And all of a sudden, I realized I better do the right thing here. And so I confessed my sins and I prayed to receive Jesus at that point in time. Um, I really, you know, I think that I always, from that point on, I always had this awareness that I probably was a Christian, but it wasn't until in my early 20s that I really began to see how important it was that I could really surrender my life to Jesus, and He was worthwhile for me to do that. That He valued a relationship with me. So
Is this about the time I remember you told me you were on church staff for about 10 years, campus church?
yeah, I had just graduated with my social work degree. But Mary and I, my wife, were attending this campus church, and we really felt called to join the church and also to join the worship team. So we were part of the whole worship community. And we also were on the sales team for the businesses. And then I became involved as a chef, running a deli, running a hotel up in Nanabashu. Actually, just I was not running the hotel, but I was the head chef for that, and so on. So that was all within the context of we called ourselves Christian Core. So we were like the Peace Corps, only we with a Christian emphasis, and we wanted to go. We trained ourselves to go overseas as non-traditional missionaries. We would actually work in jobs side by side with other people, whether it's construction, whether it was running a restaurant, whatever it was, we would work with them, and then we could more easily communicate Jesus, not because we were quote missionaries, but because the Lord really made a difference in our lives. That really shaped me going into education eventually. I saw many of those foundational principles about what it means to really walk with God and be real in Him. It played out wonderfully when I went into education.
Wow. Okay, now John, we one of my big concerns, my wife and I, Joy, we were seminary professors, so we were at the graduate level, but we were involved in Christian college work too, and yet we saw that high school students needed this kind of material, this kind of encouragement, apologetics, and whatever. So when you and I and Joy and the others were involved in starting Southwest Christian High School, we said, let's take the best principles and practices from Christian colleges and put it on the high school level. And so then later on, the slogan got developed that we were building a discipleship Christian high school. So now on the Time for Littles podcast, we're talking about littles, how when littles come to Christ and how we can encourage them in the faith and we can help them to grow. So there are a lot of children's pastors out there or Sunday school teachers. What can you do with a little kid? How young can they come to know Christ? How can you disciple a little?
Listen,
I'm listening.
well, that's what you do. My wife said to me one time, when we were at the Christian school in Cambridge, and she was working, and there's this little young one. She was probably 4.5 or 5 years old. Her name was Joanna. And Joanna came to my wife and expressed some issues, some deeper issues of faith, and said it in a childlike way, but indicated her need for a savior and so on and so forth. So I remember Mary said to me at that point in time, please remember, because I was a middle school, high school person, the little kids were like, okay, fine, they're wonderful. But she said, remember, they can hear from God. and you better listen because you will be able to hear from God through them.
Yeah.
And that really changed my view of things, and it was very foundational to me. Um, so so when I in the midst of Southwest Christian was, in a sense, an anomaly because it was just high school. But the notion that children are persons was becoming stronger and stronger, and in my sense, and also one of the great preservations of education that has become lost for many is that children are very curious. They are sponges to learn everything. But we have effectively, in many educational institutions, have effectively removed the curiosity factor from them. We tell them what's important. We tell them what they need to learn. We ask them to spit back out to us and so on. Children at the youngest ages are learning at exponential rates. They're learning everything. I often think of Zero Mostel, if you remember Zero Mostel.
Sure.
He would do this little skit where he was a baby, and he was fascinated by his hand, and he looked at it and he looked at his hand and so on and so forth. And just at the end of the thing, all of a sudden he went, he had a second one, and he had two hands, and that to me demonstrates if you go with a child and help them. Bruce, I've seen you do this with your own grandchildren. You're looking at what they're learning, because that's the key, and that's what enables their, I think it helps enable their curiosity to stay maintained. If they grow and mature with their curiosity intact, it is amazing the kinds of things that they oftentimes will do. They'll be interested in so many things far beyond what their phones can do for them, and so on. So I think that's a incredibly a crucial thing is listen to children because they're learning.
I love to watch them learn. Really.
Yes.
And say, "Oh, did you learn this? Did you?" Oh, yeah. And they learn about the Lord, and they learn about one another, and they learn about how to sing, and they learn how to do the plays in church. So, John, I uh I love to think of the kids in Sunday school and what they're getting in the classrooms and our churches and things, but those classrooms are sitting empty during the week. And there's a new movement that's been popping up. And the more I researched it, I said, oh, there's 2,000 of these around the country. Well, there's 4,000. And I looked up the name, and they're called micro schools. And micro schools would be like a couple of teachers in South Dakota say, well, we don't like our administration restrictions and stuff, so we're going to go to a strip mall and we're going to get two rooms, and we two or three teachers are going to put a dozen kids in each room, and they're going to be two or three grades in this room and two or three more grades in that room, and we've got a micro school, and they're close knit and they follow the students well and they can help them. And my thought was, why can't we put micro schools in the churches, in those Sunday school rooms that are empty during the week? So we've talked to some churches, and we have one in Northeast Minneapolis. It's ready to go. And we have one over in Edina by the high school over there. It's ready to go. And they've said, sure, come ahead. Let's do that. Let's put K through 2 in one room, and let's put 3 through 5 in another room, and let's hire three teachers to do this. And I hope there are people like you, John, that you've swung from tree to tree, and they have all these different skills that they can call on, and the love of the Lord and the love of the kids, and just nurturing them. So the other day I looked and I said, how many micro schools are there? I looked online and it said there are now 100,000 micro schools. So I went from 2,000 to 4,000. Now there's 100,000 micro schools out there.
In the world or just in the United States?
Well, it might be in the world, but I think it was just the
Okay.
United States. Yeah. And so what
Wow.
we put together is a thing we're calling the ESN, the Eden Schoolhouse Network, to
Okay.
nurture interact with local churches and help them assemble to launch and operate what we call, and I have a little banner back here, it's called the Eden Family Schoolhouse. Uh, Up here in the corner is a picture of the one room red schoolhouse in North Wisconsin, where my mother-in-law went to school for grades 1 through 10, I think. So that's Larkin School up there. And so the idea is to take the one room schoolhouse on the prairie and put that in our local Sunday schools. And to do that, do you have any concept? What do you think about that? Have you have any one room experience in your life or Sunday school experience, or can't we give kids all week long the wonderful Sunday school experience of learning and loving the Lord?
Yeah, except I don't know if I would pattern myself after the typical Sunday school experience. I actually think active learning can take place in this concept that you have, especially if you have teachers who bring a great respect to the child, to the fact that that child. The thing that I think Christian schools could do even better at is understanding that each one of those children is created in God's image.
Yeah.
And so I, there's, it's, I hate to talk about, I've just really discovered the secret of humility, but, but I learned way beyond the years that I was a teacher and in fact as administrator, is how what the necessity of humility was for the teacher and for the administrator or whatever in that kind of an environment. Because to be in a Christian school, and I hate to use it just like an adjective, but with people who really love Jesus, those children can be nurtured in a way and respected also with learning. Where are they going to take the learning themselves? Where are they go? What do they see? Um, and and so I can see that really happening on your level. The one room, interestingly enough, I don't think it's even debated at all. The success of the one room schoolhouse academically in this country far surpasses anything that we've done since we became mass educators. And because the 5-year-old, the 4-year-old, maybe a lot of times in one room schoolhouses there weren't such a thing as preschool, but if you had a 4 or 5-year-old who happened to be attending kindergarten level or whatever, they were absorbing everything that was going on in the upper grades
Of course they were.
constantly. They were probably hit with Shakespeare 100 times before they finally had to open up a book and read it. So, and they're also looking at the demeanor and the respect and all of those kinds of things. Also, the thing that the great joy that I had in my K-12 experiences. Um, whether it was a Christian education or not even, was the impact that older children have on the younger kids.
Oh, yeah.
That you actually enable, that you try to facilitate situations where there's reading, where there's different kinds of things that they get to do together. Has a huge impact on the life of that small child.
Yeah.
Big families, that was happening with big families.
Mm-hmm.
When you had 7, 8 kids in a family, the little ones were being brought up by the older ones, in a lot of ways, and we're learning in a lot of ways. So I think this concept is just wonderful, as long as the vision is clear as to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Major in what a school is. I'm sorry, my bias will be a little, I don't know if I'd say anti-Sunday school, but I think that the idea that, well, when we're in Sunday school, we talk about religious things. And I would like to see a school absolutely integrate everything that has to
Sure.
do with spiritual issues,
Yeah.
physical issues,
Yeah.
the whole thing.
So the logo behind me, I don't know if you noticed the gold word in the top, but it says Eden Family Schoolhouse.
Yeah,
So so we are talking about, the whole
that's
relationship
good.
there. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, John, thank you so much. This is a treat to talk with you, and we'll keep talking some more offline here. But thank you for your input for the Time for Littles podcast. And our prayer is that we can reach more and more littles, and we can encourage others who are involved in working with littles, and we can see um, the spread of God's love through this kind of Christian education as well. I think it's a new phenomenon, and I'd like to see that harnessed for the Lord as we go ahead. So thanks so much, John.
Thank you, Bruce.
All right.